The distress call came through the galactic emergency relay at a time when most of the bridge crew aboard the Zarlek cruiser thought the day couldn't get any worse. Commander Turl, we've received a Level 7 emergency beacon from Sector G92, barked the communications officer, a wiry, pale-skinned Harnick named Velo. His 3 fingers trembled as he tapped at the display. Location corresponds to the cave system on Rygol Four. Turl, commander of the cruiser Veleth's hand, stood up with a rigid motion. His long, scaled frame was hunched slightly from age but no less imposing. Sector G92, wasn't that the unauthorized expedition site? The one the humans were poking around in, yes, sir. One confirmed Terran among the team designation, Yarin Lokes. Turl's eyes narrowed. Humans, of course. He exhaled through his gill slits and turned. Navigation, bring us into low orbit over Rygol 4, prepare a descent shuttle. I want eyes on the cave within the hour. The shuttle dropped through the atmosphere with a gentle hum. The surface was rocky and uneven, jagged spires and crumpled ravines stretching like scars across the purple-tinged landscape. A storm brewed at the horizon, black clouds swirling unnaturally fast. The cave entrance was marked by a single flickering beacon, half buried under rubble. Atmospheric scanners picking up unstable tectonics, said Velo from the back of the shuttle. A subterranean quake must have caused the collapse. Turl stepped out first. He squinted at the beacon, then at the broad mouth of the cave. Life signs? Faint. Several, at least 5. One distinctly human. A few meters from the entrance, a gaping hole had torn open the cave floor, revealing a jagged vertical shaft. Turl's second in command, a stocky, red-eyed Varnick named Heck, knelt beside it. Looks like the floor gave way, he muttered. Too deep to see the bottom, but I can hear water. Fast moving. Turl tapped his comm. Open a frequency, I want the human on the line. A crackle, then a strained voice came through. This is Yarin Lokes. If you're hearing this, we're alive, but not for long. We've got injuries. One of the crew's unconscious, another's leg is broken. We need evac. Fast. Turl frowned. Lokes, this is Commander Turl of the Zarlek Alliance. Your team fell into a lower cavern. Yeah, floor collapsed during the scan. We landed in some kind of river tunnel, no way back up without gear. The walls are slick and the ceiling's unstable. Understood. Remain in place, we'll lower a rescue unit. No, you don't get it. The walls are crumbling. We already lost one of the team when a ledge gave way. We need a secure lift net, something big enough to carry multiple people at once. And we need it now. Turl looked around at his team. Heck shook his head. We didn't bring structural gear. Our descent ropes won't hold a full load, especially not with the water pressure below. Velo stepped forward. Commander, we don't have the materials for a net that size. Not unless we deconstruct part of the shuttle. We do that, we're grounded, Heck said bluntly. No liftoff if the weather turns. Turl turned back to the cave. Lokes, do you have any equipment for rigging? A pause, then, some, give me 2 hours, I'll get us out. Turl blinked. You'll what? I said I'll get us out. Just keep your comm open, I'll need guidance. The channel went dead. Turl stared at the receiver. Did he just say he would handle the rescue himself? That's what it sounded like, Velo muttered. Heck grunted. Either he's delusional or suicidal. Down below, Yarin wiped sweat from his brow. The air was thick, damp, and cold. Water roared past just meters away, crashing against the rocks. In the dim glow of his wrist beacon, he could make out the bruised face of Kellner, the unconscious Tascari geologist, propped awkwardly against a boulder. Another crew member, a slender, blue-skinned lion named Dira, was sitting with her leg elevated, pain etched into her features. I can help, Dira said quietly. You can't even put weight on that leg, just stay still. Yarin moved to his pack. He pulled out the climbing rope, synthetic webbing, carabiners, and a few tension locks. He eyed the ceiling again, too unstable for anchors, but the walls? Maybe. He tapped his comm. Turl, I'm going to rig a net using tension points across the walls. I'll use water-resistant rope and reinforce it with the metal rods from the survey kits. That won't hold across a 10-meter span, Turl's voice crackled. I'm not spanning it. I'm going to pull the net up from below, use the water flow to help me guide it into place, then secure it across the narrowest section. If I can get it stable, we can haul the injured up one by one. You'll need at least 6 anchor points. I counted 8. Lokes, this is insane. You're not wrong. He cut the line. Yarin moved quickly. He wedged a rod into a crevice and hammered it with a loose rock until it stuck. Then another. He tied the lines, looped them, and began weaving the net square by square. His fingers froze and bled, but he didn't stop. 2 hours passed. Then 3. Above, the storm broke. Winds howled across the cave mouth. Rain pelted the rocks. Turl paced near the entrance, watching the monitor. Commander, Velo called. Rope net is visible on scanner. He did it. Turl leaned in. Stability marginal, but it's holding. Turl opened the line. Lokes, status. Testing weight now, came the reply, a thud, then a curse. Rope slipped, adjusting tension. Lokes, the storm's worsening. You have a quarter hour before we lose the cave to flooding. I'll be ready. Yarin braced the net across the cavern's narrowest edge, then looped the ends through the strongest rods. He tested the tension, then tied a harness around Dira. You first. She's heavier, Dira protested, pointing weakly at Kellner. I'm not debating. You're conscious. If the net fails, I need someone who can grab the wall. He helped her into the net, then tapped the comm. Ready to lift. Above, Turl gave the order. The rope creaked, then rose inch by inch. The net flexed but held. Dira coughed as she vanished into the dark above. Lokes, she's through, net stable. Good, send it back. One by one he brought them up. Kellner's body had to be braced with extra padding. The third crew member, a small insectoid named Rune, clung to Yarin's back as the net made its final descent. Yarin waited until the others were gone. Then he tied himself in. The lift began. Halfway up, the ceiling groaned. Lokes. Rockfall incoming, Velo shouted. Yarin looked up in time to see a chunk of stone break loose. The net jerked. The rope snapped. Yarin screamed as he plunged. He woke up in the medbay of the Veleth's hand. 2 days later, his ribs ached. His leg was in a splint. His left hand was bound in gauze. Turl stood at the foot of the bed. You're lucky. You broke your tibia, fractured 2 ribs, and tore the ligaments in your wrist. If the net hadn't slowed your fall. Yarin groaned. Is everyone else okay? They are. Thanks to you? Yarin nodded, then looked away. I thought the net would hold. It did, long enough. Silence. Turl stepped forward. I don't understand you, Lokes. You had no proper tools, no backup, no certainty of success. And yet you built a net from scraps and saved 5 lives. Yarin chuckled, then winced. Guess I'm just stubborn. Stubbornness doesn't explain this. You defied protocol, risked your life, and succeeded with nothing but rope and grit. I didn't have a choice. That's what baffles me. You made it work anyway. Yarin closed his eyes. Turl turned to go. At the door, he paused. There are many things we Zarlekians pride ourselves on. Intelligence, order, precision. But today, we were rescued by a man with a rope. He left. Yarin smiled faintly. Damn right you were. Yarin hadn't expected to wake up again so soon, and certainly not to the sensation of something wet and cold being pressed against his forehead. Stop twitching, said a voice, low and slightly exasperated but not unfriendly. His vision sharpened slowly through a haze of bright ceiling lights. A head with mottled green skin and a half-dozen eye ridges loomed over him. The creature's hands were webbed, dexterous, and currently adjusting a slim device the size of a pen near his temple. You're not dead, the alien added. Though you probably should be, or could be. Honestly, it's complicated. Is that medical talk? Yarin rasped, his throat dry and every muscle registering its own unique protest. It's Goran talk. I'm Goran. Is that your name or species? Yes. The pen device emitted a soft beep. Goran tucked it into a pouch on his hip and turned to a console Yarin couldn't see. Each movement was smooth and deliberate, almost rehearsed. Yarin tried to sit up. His ribs immediately filed a complaint with the rest of his body. Don't do that, Goran said without turning. Your lower legs braced with a decompensated wrap, and your left wrist is immobilized. The ribs I counted 3 with partial fractures are under a microjack. You move, you lose the benefit of the pressure alignment. Then we start all over again and I start charging by the hour. Is that a joke? Depends on your insurance. Yarin let himself fall back against the angled bed. Where am I? Medbay, Deck 6, Veleth's hand. You're stable. You're also extremely annoying, but that part wasn't caused by the fall. That appears to be natural. Yarin turned his head slightly, catching sight of an enormous transparent screen showing a rotating scan of what had to be his own skeleton. A pulsing overlay marked the leg. The bones looked like they'd been chewed on. I remember the rope snapping. Good memory. The net decelerated you enough to keep your brain from bouncing around like a loose fruit. However, your leg took the brunt. Tibial fracture spiral type, clean break at least. Easy to align, painful to recover. You'll walk again, but not immediately. How long? Depends. Are you the kind of human who follows medical advice or the kind who thinks climbing stairs on day 3 is a heroic act? Yarin didn't answer. Goran finally turned around and raised his scaled brow ridges. I'll take that as a climbing stairs on day 3 answer. Fine. 2 weeks before assisted mobility, 4 before unassisted. That's if you don't sabotage yourself. What about the others? Dira, Kellner, Rune. Goran rolled his eyes, 3 of them, the others stayed fixed on Yarin. Alive, they're in recovery. You're the only one who required surgical stabilization. You win the prize for most dramatic injury. Yarin exhaled slowly. Good. A chime rang out near the door, followed by a mechanical hiss. A tall, beetle-limbed alien ducked into the room, its exoskeleton polished and its irises like slivers of obsidian. Commander Turl sent me, it said, its voice a low hum. He wants to speak with the Terran. Goran crossed his arms. He's barely conscious. I'm conscious enough, Yarin said, motioning weakly with his uninjured arm. Let him in. The beetle-limbed alien shifted aside, allowing Turl to enter. He looked slightly more relaxed than before, though that wasn't saying much. You look like a collapsed ceiling, Yarin said. You look like what happens when someone forgets they're mortal, Turl replied. Yarin grinned. Nice to see you too. Turl stepped to the side of the bed but refrained from sitting. We reviewed your field footage, the net mechanics, the bracing technique, your improvised pulley system. It shouldn't have worked. But it did. Barely. And I've been asked to submit a report to the Alliance Council explaining why a non-engineer Terran was able to outperform 2 certified rescue units in terms of results. That's not my fault. I didn't say it was. I said it's a problem. Goran tapped at a tablet. If you're going to give him an award, make it edible. Humans respond well to snacks. We're not giving him an award, Turl said flatly. We're giving him an assignment. Yarin narrowed his eyes. What kind of assignment? You're being requested as an emergency operations consultant. Temporarily, your actions exposed several logistical failures in our rapid response doctrine. I'm not a consultant. You are now, Turl said, and before you protest, know this. The Council has already issued a commendation. You may reject the title, but you're already on every broadcast channel from here to the Rimward systems. Yarin groaned. Did they at least get my name right? Mostly. Goran swiped something on the tablet and turned it toward Yarin. A headline scrolled across the top. Terran improvises life-saving device using primitive materials. Beneath it, a photo of Yarin wet, filthy, and holding a rope froze mid-frame with the caption, Unlikely hero of Rygol Four. Primitive? Yarin muttered. Turl folded his arms. Your face is now a symbol of unpredictable success. The Council wants you to speak to a delegation in 5 days. They expect insights. I don't have insights. I had duct tape and adrenaline. Then explain that. Yarin tilted his head back, wincing as the movement pulled at his ribs. Why do I feel like this is punishment disguised as flattery? It's both. A soft knock came from the doorway. A smaller alien with iridescent skin and eyes that glowed faintly peeked in. Sorry to interrupt. Yarin, Dira's asking for you. She says she won't drink her nutrient broth unless you taste it first. She's blackmailing me, technically. Yes, Yarin exhaled. She always did have a flair for drama. Turl raised an eyebrow. You're not going anywhere yet, we'll bring her here. Goran gestured toward the monitor. I'll have her wheeled in, but if she tries to climb on your bed, I'm tranquilizing both of you. Minutes later, Dira was wheeled in, her leg still elevated, a steaming cup in her hand. She looked paler than usual, but alert. I told them you'd vouch for this, she said, holding out the broth. It smells like warm algae and regret. Yarin took the cup, sniffed it, and made a face. Tastes worse. Perfect, she said, accepting it back. Now I can suffer in peace. Turl watched the exchange, then stepped back. I'll return in 2 days. You'll be briefed on the delegation then. As he left, Dira leaned back in her chair. You know you're famous now, right? I was aiming for mostly forgotten. You missed. I noticed. She sipped her broth, grimaced, and kept drinking. Later that evening, the lights dimmed on a gentle cycle. The hum of the medbay softened. Yarin lay awake, his leg throbbing, his wrist itching beneath the brace. A small screen on the wall lit up with a message from the ship's internal network. It read, "Prepared statement requested. What drives Terran adaptability in crisis?" He stared at it, then tapped the screen off. Still working on that. 2 days after the delegation request, Yarin's foot was still elevated, and he'd developed a passionate hatred for the ship's nutrient wafers. They tasted like compressed lint and grief. Goran, who had taken to visiting at arbitrary intervals without knocking, entered mid-afternoon holding a narrow container under his arm. I brought something, he said, not looking up. If it's another flavorless rectangle, I'll scream, Yarin muttered. It's a boot, Goran said, dropping the container onto the bed. Custom-molded, low-flex pressure distribution sole. You're testing it now. I'm not cleared for weight bearing. You are for partial loading. We're testing balance and tolerance. If you can stand for 5 seconds without panicking, I'll consider you slightly less useless. Yarin unlatched the brace with his good hand, taking careful, shallow breaths. The moment he tried to lower his leg, it felt like his shin had been replaced with hot glass. Goran handed him the boot and backed off. Slide it on, heel first. Toe will lock in. It did, with a hiss of air and a snug grip that sent a jolt through Yarin's calf. He clenched his jaw, not shouting only because he needed air to curse later. Now plant your foot. Slowly. He pushed off the bed frame inch by inch until the sole of the boot touched the floor. The muscles in his thigh twitched and his knee tried to buckle, but he held. 5 seconds, Goran counted. Not screaming, you're ahead of schedule. Is this progress or punishment? Both, Goran said, already scribbling on his tablet. I'll reevaluate tomorrow. Don't take the boot off unless you want to dislocate something. Yarin dropped back onto the bed, sweating but upright. An hour later, he was wheeled into a briefing room on Deck 3. The space was unusually bright, the walls lined with large panels displaying various planetary terrains. Most of the occupants were alien. Turl stood at the head of the room, surrounded by a semicircle of seated delegates including a tall, translucent Lernexian, a trio of orange-skinned Arveth, and a single stiff-jawed Praxan who looked like he'd been carved from ice. Yarin was rolled in without ceremony. This is the Terran, Turl said. He will now explain how he resolved a Class 6 collapse scenario with non-specialized equipment in under 4 hours. I never agreed to. You're here, Turl interrupted. Speak. Yarin blinked at the crowd watching him with the intensity of a dissection committee. Well, he began, we were in a cave system with no structural support, no viable exit, and rising water. We had injuries, limited light, and no climbing gear. The Lernexian leaned forward, its skin flickering faintly. You stabilized the lift structure using water current? I used the current to guide the net into position. Yeah, it wasn't ideal. The walls were brittle. I had to wedge supports manually. You pounded metal into stone with your hands, asked one of the Arveth. No, with a rock. My hands aren't that impressive. The Praxan narrowed his eyes. Why didn't you wait for Alliance extraction? Because we didn't have time. One of our crew was unconscious and barely breathing. If I'd waited for protocol, he'd have drowned. The room fell silent. Turl folded his arms. The Council wants clarification on what enabled you to succeed. Was it instinct, training, or improvisation? All three, Yarin said. But mostly the last one. I've worked in unstable environments before. You learn to stop looking for ideal answers and start building the least fatal ones. The Lernexian tilted its head. You performed high-risk anchor placement without diagnostic tools. That violates 92 safety protocols. I didn't have 92 options. I had gravity, rope, and panic management. Another pause. Then the shortest Arvith spoke. What is panic management? Doing things anyway. A sound like a cross between a snort and a whistle came from the back. A few of the aliens exchanged glances. Turl straightened. You've heard his account. You've seen the footage. Any further questions? The delegates murmured, then shook their heads or flicked appendages in the negative. You've provided what we needed, the Lernexian said. We will adjust our doctrine to include contingency improvisation parameters. Yarin blinked. Wait, you're changing your protocols? Your methods were illogical, the Praxan said, but effective. We cannot ignore results. You're welcome. I think your pain tolerance is also being studied, added one of the Arvith. You functioned with a fractured tibia and internal bruising. I didn't have a lot of options. That seems to be a recurring theme, Turl muttered. The meeting dissolved shortly after, with the delegates filing out in various directions and languages. Yarin was left alone with Turl in the now quiet room. Didn't expect them to listen, Yarin said. They didn't listen. They evaluated. You passed. That feels worse, somehow. You'll adjust. They made their way down to the lift, Yarin pushing himself carefully in the wheeled chair. The boot thudded softly with every minor jostle. Turl pressed the panel for the medbay floor, then waited. You're being released tomorrow, he said. Back to Earth, back to active status. You'll remain on the ship until the next cycle shift, then we'll transport you to a human-compatible station. Yarin leaned back. I thought I was a consultant. You were. Then you finished consulting. So that's it. It is. The doors opened. Later that night in the medbay, Goran entered without knocking again and tossed a folded datasheet onto Yarin's lap. What's this? Your discharge summary. Also a report. Yarin scanned the top lines, eyebrows rising. You wrote this. I don't enjoy paperwork, but I dislike incorrect records more. I described your injuries, mobility milestones, and recovery progression. Did you include the part where I almost passed out trying to stand? No. I included the part where you didn't. Oh. I also noted that you refused sedation despite recommendations. Because I didn't trust alien anesthetics, you trusted a collapsing cave, Yarin grinned, that I could see. Goran picked up the empty tray beside the bed, then paused. You did something atypical, not just surviving, you made others believe they could too. I didn't have a choice. That's not what they'll remember. Yarin looked down at the boot, then up at the ceiling. I'm not sure what to do with all this. You don't have to do anything, just walk. That's enough. The next morning, Yarin limped down the ramp of the Veleth's hand under his own power. The boot clicked softly with each step. No fanfare, no ceremony, just the hum of a transport shuttle waiting to take him to a quieter orbit. As he boarded, he glanced back once at the ship, its hull gleaming against the pale blue of a low-gravity sky. He didn't wave. He didn't need to. He'd already left a mark.